Focus on Parliament show, our dear viewers, with me, Okot Ola, as our nation comes down from a security scare and a series of security scandals that happened in the past 2 weeks. We are drawn back to the normal issues of governance and accountability. A big one of which, yesterday, as we saw in the order papers, was the issue around supplementary budgets. For our dear viewers, a supplementary budget is a request by a government agency or ministry for additional funding from the state reservoirs. However, this must be approved by Parliament according to the Public Funds Management Act. So today with me, as my distinguished guests, we have Akampuria Harris, the Speaker, Honorable Speaker for Kawempe Division. Thank you and welcome back once again.
Republic of Kawempe.
Republic of Kawempe.
Yes. There's a Republic of Kawempe.
We have as well the Right Honorable Bernard Odoi. It's good to have you here. It's the first time to host you.
Anytime.
And I hope it will be an enriching discussion.
Anytime, my
Honorable
brother.
Odoi is the youth MP for Eastern Uganda. He covers a quarter of the country.
Yes. It's always a pleasure to have this interface, and it's always amazing to have platforms with you, the speaker here of the New Republic. I didn't know it exists in this country.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll elaborate more. And also my very senior
fellow
Luo here. It's always a learning session every time I meet him for coffee or tea.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm happy to be here to share with the
You're
citizens.
most welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, our dear elder brother, Joseph Osheno, always ready and able to advise us on different issues pertaining our dear country. You're most welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to discuss the state of the nation, particularly, you're right, after a recent scare is paid to for insecurity in our country, but also to come back to have a conversation around how we can teach people who hold our pockets well and responsibly. And I'm delighted to be amongst young people, especially including particularly my young brother Bernard, about whom I'm very proud as youth MP for the East, and a young man from my soul. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and it's good to have you. Mr. Osheno, as we all know, is a UPC ideologue and a renowned media personality in our country. And going straight to the discussion, and I'll start with you, the Right Honorable Bernard Odoi. Going through my notes this afternoon, I realized Hansard is pretty much dominated in many ways by supplementary budget issues. I believe this is not supposed to be the normalcy. However, we've seen a rampancy of supplementary budgets over the last few years. There are many issues pertaining what is included there, which we shall discuss as we go along. But why do we see these supplementary budgets coming up time after time, given your insider experience?
Well, thank you so much. Putting this into context, I want to draw the attention of the viewers to discuss and appreciate the whole budgeting process. Budgeting process takes almost 70% of the year.
Yeah.
But quite often it is at this time, like yesterday, that the country gets to know that actually there's budgeting taking place.
Yeah.
Now, budgeting process starts as early as August.
Yes.
Of every year. Between August to November, ideas are sought. Minister of Finance, that is charged with looking at priorities of government, the technical team, the staff, then they go across the country to find out what would form the priority areas of the government.
Yes.
So then be part of the funding of the government. Of course, they also look at the revenue projection.
Yeah.
Then after that, between March and April, between March, May, April, that is now implementation. Where now cabinet then have taken time to discuss the ideas, the priority areas, and the revenue projection by Minister of Finance, which is charged with this mandate. After that, May, June, April, March, April then now budget framework paper comes.
Mm.
There's a discussion now. The different committees of parliament then meets with the entities, MDAs, ministries, and agencies that picks budget from that specific committee. Committees of parliament are charged to oversee these MDAs. Now, at that point, there's discussion. Like I sit on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, where we are in charge of judiciary, Electoral Commission, IGG, URSB, Law Reform Commission, and several other entities.
Led by your namesake?
Yes, now, and also Minister of Justice.
Yeah.
So when we are interfacing with them, we then discuss the budget framework paper.
Yeah.
What is government thinking? What is their plan? Where is their interest? What is their budget for human resource? What is their budget for capital development? Where do they want to put the money? So then we have that conversation at a committee level. But while we are doing that, we look at the past budget and the running budget. We audit and find out, the other time we gave you, say, 10 billions for this purpose. Did it actually serve that purpose? Or it is repetitive. You ask for 10 billion for this. Again, this very financial year, you've asked for the same. Now, at that level as a committee, we are supposed to audit. On behalf of the citizens of this country, on behalf of the people who voted us, and as parliament, we have that power then to audit and see, do we approve this or we don't? Now, also we even advise that priorities within the MDAs can also be switched. Like if they have put, say, 100 billions for capital development, and then we feel there's need for human resource, like for judiciary, we have been struggling with too many cases. And part of the reason has been because the judicial officers, officials are few. Also, if you look at the office of the DPP, the human resource base is has been very small. And I've been asking for money for capital development. So during our conversation, we guided and said, no, you need to have some sufficient money to then recruit more people. Now, I wanted to bring that into context. Now, the issue of supplementary, the Public Finance Management Act and the Constitution of this country clearly provides for that. Now, the challenge I have as a member of parliament, as a Ugandan, as a taxpayer, is one. The Constitution is silent on to what extent can government come and pick money or use money before Parliament has actually approved. Parliament must appropriate any cent that is collected, even the money we get from as grants or support from any other agencies or development partners. Parliament has a say on it. The challenge I have is that government has been actually hiding on the provision of 3% of the budget. Now, whereas that would not be an issue, the mistake comes in a way of priorities. I can give you an example. Like now we are faced with the issue in Masaka, where the bridge collapsed in Katonga. Now, Katonga Bridge falls under emergency. When we are appropriating funds in this financial that is ending, it was not foreseeable that we need now.
And I believe that's one of the qualities of an item that is included in a supplementary budget.
Yes. Now, those are the positives. For that, I agree entirely. Government should come, like when we were faced with ADF attacks in Western Uganda. That was justified. As it can be a priority area where government should actually pick money, spend, then they can come later to Parliament, and Parliament would have no issue to approve such. It is for the greater good of the citizens of this country. It aids trade, it impacts on economies and welfare of our people. My challenge is one. there has been incidences where government spends money before. The law demands that for government to spend money, Parliament should approve.
Yes.
Now they hide on the 3%. Spend that money.
And then
there are items that ordinarily Parliament will not approve. I can give you an example. 200 billions last year was given to local industries. Ordinarily, if conversation was brought by government to Parliament that we need this money, this Parliament, where I'm a member, we do not approve that. We've seen money given to Atiak.
Yes, and I think that's the recent case.
That is the recent case, which I want to actually build on.
Yes.
That for me, my challenge with supplementary budget are those incidences where the priority interest as a country has been deviated from. Parliament guided that for Atiak investment, the money should be for shares. Let the money be contribution for us as a country to have shares in that Atiak sugar factory.
Yes.
But the money, we later found out that the money was used actually for buying equipment. Now that is a deviation, and that is also abuse of powers of Parliament.
So just to get you right, the money was supposed to buy equipment, but in exchange, government was supposed to get shares.
No. This money was contribution by government to buy shares from Atiak.
Yes.
When Atiak approached government and expressed willingness to sell shares to them, to allocate shares to them, they did not indicate that they actually lacked the equipment necessary to run. So Parliament, that has the mandate to appropriate resources, was convinced that, well and good, this is a viable venture. Our people are going to get jobs. When we support this, since they have already established machineries and human resource, we need to perhaps just bolster them to capture market, recruit more human resource, expand on their coverage, the sugarcane plantation, and that was good enough. But later, we actually found out that the money, the over 180 billion, was used, meaning there was misrepresentation of facts by Atiak to the government, or the government misrepresented themselves before the MPs, Parliament. Another incident that I don't agree with, of course, ordinarily would not pass also the test of the 11th Parliament. Tens of billions was allocated to Lubowa, the construction of Lubowa.
Yes.
We have Mulago here. It's the biggest hospital in this country. Human resources there. Why not prioritize and look at what is lacking for now in Mulago, where we all call home? Someone deep in Mulanda, they will refer them from regional referral in Mbale to Kampala, and that is Mulago. Mbarara, Gulu, Wea, Masaka, it is Mulago. Now, why not empower and look at how best you can refurbish, how best you can bring the equipments needed, how best you can improve on the welfare of the human resource of this hospital. Because one of the priority areas of our country, security, education, and health. Now, these three items working in tandem. If you have security, people will go to school. When people go to school, others will be medics, lawyers, economists. But there's also this factor, which is constant health. We need to refurbish health. When someone falls sick, operation, we are living in a world where lately cancer is everywhere. Gone are the days of our foreparents, our grandparents. They would manage because of their lifestyle. But for now, we need good medical attention. So for me, my problem is one, when the government comes for supplementary budget, actually after spending. Now then you kill the constitutional mandate given to Parliament to actually appropriate, to levy taxes. Parliament actually, if you read Articles 1 from 150 up to 164, 150, 51, 52, Parliament has all these powers.
Yes.
But now when because of the absence, the silence of this in our constitution, now government simply hides there, they spend the money, and then later comes. And when now we ask them, they say, this falls within the 3%. But the question is, if you're serving the interest of the citizens, this is not an emergency. Attack is not an emergency.
And it's not unforeseeable.
Yes. Luboa is not an emergency.
Yeah.
Rocco is not an emergency. Why?
Yes.
Why? So I think it's until we hold the foot of the executive, take it into a fireplace, I think there is something amiss. Yeah. We need to look at the constitution. Perhaps there is need to amend it.
Yes.
And provide clearly that government does not, must not, shall not spend money unless the matter is justified by emergencies. For anything like things that are foreseeable, there shouldn't be that discussion.
Yeah.
So for me, that is my concern. The law provides for it, but there is total abuse of the same provision.
Yeah.
And that kills the act of leadership, that brings the issue of impunity, and that vitiates the powers of members of Parliament as a house.
Just very briefly, is it the case then that as we have it now, there is no provision for emergency funding that is appropriate by Parliament? So no existing fund. So government cannot really legally and constitutionally formally go to a particular pot of money in the Ministry, say, of Finance or Ministry for Emergencies or something like that.
During budgeting process, we have a projection of what we shall collect and perhaps through taxes.
Yeah.
Then we have a projection of what we will borrow, and that entire wholesome amount is then channeled. Here we are putting this percentage. Here is so the whole money is absorbed. Now, what falls under emergency
spends?
Yes, that is where government is allowed at any time to borrow with approval of Parliament.
Okay.
Now, that is where the abuse comes.
So in this case, they're not borrowing; they're basically using.
Now, what they do is this: because you cannot borrow before Parliament approves.
Precisely, yes.
So they spend, like if we say the budget for buying, say, construction of roads is 200 billions. Medical service is 300 billions. Now they will pick 30 billion from medical service. They will pick 50. Now that act is too dangerous, because now you pick from already a prioritized area and put somewhere where there's no emergency. Now what happens is, later, because they have already spent this money, now they tell you we've spent on this, hiding under the 3%, but not falling within the precincts of emergency.
Yes.
Now later, you find that now your Parliament is pushed to borrow to fill the other void. The other challenge is at Ministry of Finance. Parliament appropriates and say 100 billion will be for Mulago. And money is released per quarter. So you break it down, it's around 33 billion per quarter. Parliament has already approved the 33 billion.
Yes.
Minister of Finance will release 10 and do like this. They fold their hands. They release 10. Parliament said no, 30 per quarter.
Yeah.
For them, they release 10. with that impunity. Now you release 10, budget was 30, and all these essential services within Mulago, all this particular sector of the economy remains stranded.
Yeah.
And then again, you're speaking about economic development. So for me, that is the missing gap.
Again, if you don't mind, Ben, is there no provision then for Parliament, in this case, someone, the Minister of Finance?
Of course, they hide under one thing again. We do that every time. You summon them and they tell you, we were projecting to collect 200 billion. We've only collected 110 billion. By the time you ask for audited reports to really confirm this, you've already entered another financial year or another quarter.
Yeah.
So there's just need to be, we can't get tired of this. We just need a collective voice, hold government accountable, stand firm and say as Parliament, we are tired of this, but then we need laws against this.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without the provision expressly provided for, because the principle is that whatever the law doesn't provide for, allows.
Yeah.
So you can't say we are not going to do this because the law does not provide for it. Yes, so we just need to be very categorically, very clear and amend the Constitution and other enabling laws to have it provided strictly that this cannot be done within this. So that if it is not an emergency,
it's not considered.
Yes, and there should be ingredients of what amounts to an emergency.
Yeah.
Including penalties.
Thank you very much for that educative session. We had to sit down and listen from inside itself, not just Parliament, but the legal committee. Honorable Harris, all the way from the Republic of Kawempe. We see a trend, and I believe Honorable Doi touched it when he talked of the case of Rocco, 200 billion.
Yeah.
We see yesterday 108 billion towards Atiak Sugar. I believe a month ago we had 86 billion going towards Munyonyo Speak Resort.
Exactly.
We know the scrutinies that the budget here has aligned the chronological process of budgeting, but we know the scrutiny that goes into releasing the official budget. But then we see a lot of these chips coming in between this budgeting process through the supplementary budget, which he has said is legal under Section 25 of the Public Finance Management Act.
Yeah.
Do we see elements of connivance, given that these are not emergency issues?
Well, I am thunderstruck hearing the honorable member, decrying what's going on, all the illegality, and then Parliament is watching on. I think that the Parliament has let us down, they have let the country down, as far as they have allowed the executive to run away with that level of impunity, illegality.
I just beg to...
Just a moment.
I beg to clear one thing.
Whereas he says we need a constitutional amendment, I strongly disagree. I think that in our constitutional framework, Parliament has enough mandate to check the excesses of the executive. And the virus of supplementary budgets is one classic excess that Parliament has let the executive run away with. They clearly have legal remedies that they can pursue to put the executive into order. But they have allowed them. Why? Because they don't have the cajoles. They don't have the backs to do what they ought to do. They have allowed the executive to do it. And as long as we have the character of the Parliament we have today, even next year, you're going to have the same trend. Why? This Parliament of Uganda today is not loyal to the people of Uganda. They are loyal to the president. And that's why now he's talking about the supplementary budget. And I want to ask him, yesterday they passed the budget, 52.79 trillion. And of this money, there were billions of money, luxurious allocations to the president. They passed it, all of them. I want to know if my brother here objected 550 million to the dressing and beddings of the president. 550 million a year. You have 500 for electricity. You have 500 for water to the state house. I mean, Semunju clearly made the math for us and he told us what they passed, my brother here and his colleagues, allows the president to spend 1.1 billion per day. And then he comes here and tells us that the constitution is the problem. No, the legislators are the problem because their loyalty is misplaced. And these are this is my message to our viewers and Ugandans at large.
Yes.
We need to see the problem for what it is and be bold and honest enough to call it what it is. And the problem is that we are under a kind of a monarch, hiding itself under a democratic or constitutional dispensation. Because otherwise, with the roads, with the appalling schools all over the country, yes, with the appalling state of health care, with the state of being the farmers, everyone, the state of hardship that the country is going on, for parliament to pass a luxurious budget to the head of state, what do you call that? What do you call that? And then a member comes here and says, you know what? We need to amend the budget, we need to amend the constitution. No, this is a classic case of legislative failure. It's madness. It's madness. And then, I mean, I can compare this to a case of a family where the head of the family is a drunkard who coerces the wife and the children to bring whatever toils they have made over the day. And then he says, you have 40%, that 60% he allocates it to his usual luxurious drinking and colleagues and womanizing and all of that. And at the end of the day, the household has no money to send kids to school, has no money left for Medicare, has no money for investment and further development of the family, has no money for proper feeding. And then the head of the family is like, well, the problem is we have pigs, we have corruption. But come on, 60% of the household income, you have allocated it for marwa. You're drinking it, you're womanizing, you're doing it, you're spending it, you're moving abroad. The jets, I've seen the fleet. I can break it down. Look at the expenditure of the state house. It's luxurious. I mean, you could think, and I think Honorable Semuju was right, you could think that this is a film star. You could think that this is a Kim Kardashian for a president. It's absurd, it's appalling, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I disagree with you, my brother.
I'll give Honorable Doi a chance to respond.
When you are a speaker of a fictitious organization, that
which organization is that?
I am not aware of Kawempe Republic.
That's not part of the conversation. You know that was a joke. Please address the substantive matters.
That's why I brought it.
Yeah. So you were joking?
Unless it's about just rhetoric. But I want to stand firm and admit that the provision that we have, there is a loophole. And it is that loophole that we are now deliberate. There are so many things like, there's something being cooked.
Okay.
To amend that. So I can authoritatively still affirm that this is what we found. As a committee, we've had discussion, even now we are from a meeting, and we are discussing that amendment.
Yes.
Now, if the law does not provide, you cannot act beyond that.
Yeah.
You can only operate within the provision. Because...
But the law provides you remedies. When the government, the executive, acts in excess of its powers, there are clear remedies within the Constitution and the entire legal framework of this country.
Would you just spell it out?
No. You're the member of parliament.
You're
here.
talking.
You're the member of parliament here. For example, let me give you an example. You have powers not to ratify. the supplementary budget.
What is ratification?
Ratification.
No, because
now
you're using words out of context.
You're going into semantics now. But we are talking about passing a supplementary budget.
Use simple words that you understand, because you don't ratify.
Ratification means that you are giving legal cover to a decision originally taken without the mandate, but you are authorizing it, even when it has already been taken. Essentially, when you pass a supplementary budget, that's what you have taken. You're doing the way you described it. Just a minute.
Because you don't understand. No, listen.
Let's listen from
You
Honorable
didn't listen to
Bernard.
me.
Yeah.
I told you supplementary. The Public Finance Management Act gives that leeway that government can use 3% there of the budget. There is no legal provision in this country.
But it's not an open check.
That it must be justified.
It is what I'm telling you. It must be justified. It must be justifiable. And Parliament
now
can tell the
you're
executive.
speaking guesswork. I am telling you facts.
Let's listen
that
from
there is
from,
not
from
strict
the
have
committee.
monopoly over the law.
I'm not even discussing the law.
Even the knowledge or practice.
I am simply telling you
what you have failed to do. Yes. And I'm showing
that
you
that
where
there is no
up.
provision that blocks government. That before you take advantage of the 3% of the total budget, first come here. And we are saying, as 11th Parliament, we are now working on amendment of that provision so that it is strict. That whereas government can use 3%, there should be limitation as to what extent you can use that money. And you cannot say, so MPs are not working. I am telling you that the 11th Parliament...
Do you project that the 11th Parliament will live with this law in place?
This is coming in the next quarter when Parliament resumes.
Okay.
It is part of the reason. After we are going for a break for like 2 months.
Okay.
But there has been lined up meetings for that. We've done benchmarking on that.
Okay.
And the test will be, have we brought that? The next conversation before next financial year should be, you guys found this. Have you done anything better to improve on it? What you found there, you can't just wake up one day and say, now we are bringing this law. It's a process.
Yeah.
And as a committee, as a house, we are working on that loophole so that the same does not carry on.
Thank you very much.
And I admit that it is a lapse. That's why we are owning it. That we must amend.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable
No.
Bernard and Campbell. I think it's Honorable Harris seems to suggest that the MPs are not doing enough, and in a conundrum,
Sure.
Honorable Doi feels they're doing what they have to do. Let's wait and see. I believe in the next quarter, I believe we shall reconvene here.
They came for money for Loboa. Parliament rejected. They had to hide under that lacuna, under that loophole, then picked money and gave out.
But
Then later came.
Let me just go to Honorable Shen over here.
But on that very point,
we will come back. We will get
censure.
back. There's something that Harris didn't answer. Is the trend of a lot of deals, what look like deals, connivance, to come up during this supplementary budget process, which, as we have said, according to the Public Finance Management Act, is properly legal. But then what is legal is not necessarily moral.
True.
We see a lot of deal-like arrangements. We have seen the Luboa issue, we have seen Rocco, we have seen Munyonyo, we have seen Atiak. What do you make of this trend?
Before I go to that, I just want to come back to Bernard again. But what is the likelihood of the proposed amendments passing? Because I think that would be the hope for the assembly. It would be a very important test for you, and I think it would be a very big relief for the country. But if you don't want to comment,
I can comment.
Yes,
we had a test in the anti-homosexuality bill. We had a huge test on that. And if pressure would be persuasive on decisions, it wouldn't have passed. And so I want to state here categorically, clearly that for this I have hope
The feeling in the House is that, yes,
it will pass.
the citizens can.
Because there are incidences already where Parliament has failed, refused to approve their request. Now, if we bring that thread, that if there's a supplementary budget, even if it is an emergency, emergency will be known by everyone. It must be justified. There must be conversation.
Exactly.
Now, you can't act towards that when there's no legal provision to the same. And that is why we are saying, since they are hiding here, it's like you are chasing a thief, and now they've been running, then all of a sudden they are in a room.
Let's have Honorable Osheno here. Yeah, I asked a question earlier about the trend that we see of deal-like arrangements within Parliament, passing out millions or billions of shillings. What do you make of this trend, just before we go for a break?
I will possibly not answer it in that way. I think because the conversation between the two has been rather robust and useful.
Yes.
And we could as well pack our bags and go home, and it will be good enough for our day in the office. Number one. But number two, very quickly, it has been an important conversation. I think very broadly, the challenge is not because Bernard and I can call one another for breakfast in the village, very short distance, over bicycle, rather than we don't need the motorbikes or Kampala like potholes. It's not because of that. But I think Bernard did actually an important thing to actually explain the lacuna. Extremely important for the country. And in the event, hopefully then the likely event that this actually covered, we are saying that let's then wait for what next. In the absence of that, I get the frustrations from Harris, and that has been generally part of my frustration. It would be the frustration from across the country, that why and why and why. In part simply because we have an impunity. We have a regime that is rather instructive. What has shocked me, though, has been the manner in which institutionally you can have leaders in position, whether they're ministers of finance, ministers and or civil servants in Bank of Uganda, or people in what we used to call Ministry for Planning and Economic Development, or possibly even people in Ministry of Disaster Management, in this case perhaps Prime Minister's Office. People who are political leaders of our caliber, who have the privilege to hold positions as ministers and sit at this desk, and they fail to have the thinking capacities for projections in terms of emergencies and priorities, but then two, civil servants, young men and women like yourselves, who will grow, school them and enable them and train them to become like average officers, to even before they become commissioners. They should be sensible and decent men and women in whose hands we should pay our taxes, and they should go and work and strategize for us. What I'm saying is this: it is absolutely shocking that nation states, in this case Uganda, which has now become part of the routine, hence the frustration. I can see part of the frustration in Bernard, that every year supplementary, every year emergencies, and you don't project where these days
every quarter.
Every quarter. It's every quarter. Where these days, those days when people were doing statistics and mathematics was not my strongest, although I scored very highly in primary, but later it was not really my strongest. Who is it that does not even know how to do statistical projections that look, this year I earned A, B, C, D, and next year is likely going to be this, or these are areas of possible crisis emerging. So that is the nature of our government. But the point is, the problem is the executive. The Mr. Executive is a one-man thing. The Mr. Executive has been a spoiled kid, over 37 years. The Mr. Executive has been running this country like a zombie and politicizing it away from the institutional frameworks. So meaning Parliament itself is a victim. And I'm delighted if in the National Assembly, the parliamentarians away from Bernard, and Bernard is a young, more recent parliamentarian, and I hope they're part of the energy for this. But if there are people who've been in this assembly for the last 10 years, and some of them are my age mates and over, and they don't see this, and they think they represent the citizens of this country. No, I think the firing and the firing shot is this: that enough is enough. At some stage, we need to be able to say no. It is simply the fact that we are running a government where there's no priorities. The areas that you refer, talk Atiak, take it to State House. Talk Lubo, take it to State House. Talk Rocco, take it to State House. And talk, which one was that?
Sudir.
Talk Sudir, take it to State House. Talk Sudir and Munyonyo, take it to State. So we know what the issues are. The issues are basically personal. And so in personalizing this, it's got nothing to do with an assembly, which is predominantly NRM, but it's very much about the executive, which is Mr. Museveni, and it's all about himself. Now, if Mr. Museveni was interested, it wouldn't be an issue. And part of my concern without necessarily... I know where you're coming, but let me just conclude this. And part of my own concern in terms of reservations is this, that I actually don't know how much Bernard's colleagues, more senior colleagues, or perhaps people like, say, the Speaker or the Chief Whip...
How could you possibly exonerate Parliament?
I'm not...
That is clear.
His
No, I'm contextualizing it. I'm contextualizing it. In fact, I'm saying the problem, the big problem starts from the executive at the top. No, I'm not for that. I think I gave my context for that. I'm simply saying, as far as we as a country, we've got our priorities wrong. And the person who is at the helm has got an agenda, that all of us need to be able to...
But Otieno, as we conclude, you know, in the UK,
minute,
in a minute, in the UK, we know the history of Great Britain and the relationship between the Parliament and the monarch. If we were to excuse Parliament the way you are doing, then the British would still be a monarch.
Absolutely.
But Parliament played a critical role. They understood that the supreme ruling power is the power of the people as enshrined under the Constitution. And they took on the monarch, that is the executive. And gradually, they almost eliminated the monarch completely, to the extent that now the Great Britain, the monarch, is simply ceremonial. So I don't... when you have... Yes, he is ceremonial. He's ceremonial. He has no powers at all. So you see a clear context between what the British Parliament did and what our Parliament, when faced with the same challenges, is doing.
Let me just help you guys. Let me just help you guys.
Yeah.
As far as parliamentary processes are concerned, with respect, I'm actually a mini expert on it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. And I held back, on the other institutions taking on Mr. Museveni very deliberately. So number two. But then number three, actually, on the British question, the issue is actually not necessarily even about the monarch. The issue is actually the Prime Minister. So the government, the monarch is actually very much away. So it's really about the Prime Minister.
But
so
in terms of the evolution, the monarch was everything.
No, I'm actually helping your point, young man. In terms of the powers of Parliament versus the government, in this case, the Prime Minister, not the kingdom. They're very, very clear, number one. And then number two, meaning Parliament as an entire house. And then you come to the question of parliamentary committees, their powers and voices, as scrutiny bodies, extremely important. And then when you come into the power of the voices of the ordinary people, how they respond to this, very, very powerful. What I'm saying is here, thus far, it is the case that one office, meaning the president's office, has been holding, if you like, the rest of all these organizations hostage. And I'm simply hoping that in this case, Parliament is waking up. But I know also that you guys had a bit of time. We're going to go into the break. I am just an debate, and I know I was going to come back to that.
You'll have enough time in the second segment.
I think it's fair. Let's give me a minute.
We'll have enough time in the second segment. I really appreciate.
There's a comment I wanted to make on this discussion.
No, we will start from there.
Okay.
Thank you very much, my dear panelists. I'm really glad and honored to be an enabler of this discussion. I believe there's a general agreement on the issue. There's a disagreement on the belief that the solution can be found in the way that is being suggested. And that is exactly where we will start. And we hope it's as fiery as it was in the first segment. To our dear viewers, stay with us. Focus on Parliament with me, Okotola, as we come back for the second segment. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you, our dear viewers, and welcome back to the Focus on Parliament show with me, Okotola. As you know, one of the key roles of Parliament, a member of whom we have here, is oversight and scrutiny of the executive in terms of accountability and general governance and administration. We are in a budget-intense period where we are dealing with issues of the budget, but also the supplementary budget. We had a very robust first session where Honorable Doi did us the honor of taking us through the process. My colleague would call it a duty of taking us through the process. And we are going to continue with that discussion right now. A point of contention in the first debate, which was pretty fiery, was that while we all agree, I'm not supposed to agree because I'm a moderator, but while you all agree to the fact that there's an issue with the supplementary budget, he suggests that you're not pushing enough. But also, Mr. Sheno, and allow me to paraphrase you, suggests that there's an element of naivety to think that you will have the lump sum support, for example, some senior or particular elements within the party, some of whom we don't know, but might be benefiting from the whole supplementary budget system. So what do you have to say in response to those?
Well, one would be left without a choice but to think that way. But I wanted to allow me submit on
Yes, please.
what we were sharing with my brother earlier on. The Honorable Semujong, and a very senior, very elaborate, very vocal, very informed, sits on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, where I do sit, sits on Budget Committee. It is in our rules that if you don't agree with the committee's endorsement, you present a minority report. Minority report then forms part of the debate. Casually standing up and you say, in this budget, they have given 500 million for water bills, arrears, there's this for president for dress up. I don't think also is a good thing. One would expect that my very senior colleague, Honorable Semujo, from the opposition, he has been there longer, sits on budget committee, to come on a day like yesterday with a minority report.
But it was presented.
Saying, this. I don't agree with it. Then you would even, the law allows you court members, like when we were doing the anti-homosexuality. You court members to sign on the report. It goes into the Hansard. Instead of just speaking for the camera during that house to debate, for me is merely politicking.
But the minority report was presented.
But also what is important is during the process, the whole process, when it is being planned, we have access to all these documents. Now, for members who actually sit on the budget committee, they have now all the entire budget, from legal committee, from park, from gender. they have all this.
Moderator,
Yeah.
I beg, please, the honourable member to clarify, because honestly speaking, the minority report he's talking about was submitted. I think it was almost a month ago. The alternative budget was presented by the leader of opposition. But even at the committee level, the minority reports you're talking about. So what do you mean by Semuju was speaking to the cameras?
Now, my point is, individually, on the floor, you speak as an individual. At the committee work, you are a team. Now, work of parliament is done 65% at committee level.
That's right.
Now, the other remaining 35% is not for the house actually during the house session. It is like half of it. Now, if you look at that percentage, then it is almost negligible. My point should be, when the whole process is taking place, that is the time when the voice should be raised.
So really what you're saying then, Bernard, is that the alternative views, in this case almost certainly the opposition views, do not seem to be apparent during these processes in the committees and before maybe coming to the House group.
Yes, my point is aligned to that. But the committee that is charged with this is the budget committee.
Yes.
Where the opposition are members, NRM are also members, and even the independent. Now, when you don't even need to wait for that level, now that the whole country is going to be addressed on the plans of the government. I would think when they are still adding ingredients to now come up with this meal, that is the time that we should be very alert and address
the Honorable Bernard, and maybe just to query further, the mere fact that there's a minority report on an issue that we find that we all agree that is an exorbitant budget means that there's a majority somewhere. So what then, I mean, you speak that you have the same confidence given the Anti-Homosexuality Act, where we saw the parliament really unite.
With the
but then here, I think there's a little bit of a contradiction that you need to clarify, that there's a majority that is supporting this problem, but then you have the confidence that that same majority is going to solve it.
I beg your pardon a bit on
so
that.
we have a
interesting,
and maybe Harris can expound on it, but we are saying
the contradiction is
there is a majority that is supporting the exorbitant budgeting process, but then
which is the tenet of democracy.
Yes, but then you're going to use that same majority.
I'm saying the majority.
You're going to use that same majority to check the same budgeting process. So that is where we are finding an issue.
Now, my point is this. Whereas the alternative view makes a lot of sense, it shouldn't come at the tail end. When food is ready, they are going to serve. In which case, during the budgeting process, let's have these voices. So that perhaps this can spark interest from also the wider public. Who then gives us the mandate?
But Honorable
Ben, maybe we are putting you too much on the spot. Maybe the implication coming from Ola here is that then, if then that is the argument, is it any wonder then that the majority allow, with the exceptions of the areas you've very clearly articulated, there's actually almost a consensus majority view, which is completely non-partisan. Why then is it the case that some of these issues, which are so rather obvious and so apparent, that should really not be partisan? Because at the end of the day, it's Milton Obote who told me, and always used to tell the country, but told me very emphatically that, Joe, the way we're governing, we know schools are not schools don't know any religion, and hospitals don't know tribes. So we basically deliver this. So what is it that some of your colleagues, which is almost certainly most of your colleagues, don't share your views? Because I take it that your view is very consistent with mine, actually ours on this one here. Why is it that the majority of your colleagues don't see enough issues with many of these things, to the extent therefore that perhaps the executive gets away with rather too much, minus the very specific we are talking about. And I think that's the point. And if you are sure that's of that, for me, I would be very persuaded going home today with a lot of hope.
Thank you. I want to get back to how actually Parliament works. Now, when you are not a member of the budget committee, you can only, one, discuss matters of these entities, MDAs, that pick vote from your committee, which I named earlier on. Now, me who's not a member actually of budget committee, when now they are absorbing all these other budgets, for now the entire country, my task only is at this time, at the tail end, when now it comes on the floor yesterday. My point is, for members who sit on the budget committee, it should be their task that if you disagree on a matter, help us educate the public that they are cooking this, but I feel it is poisonous for our consumption, such that even by the time that the food is served now for the general public, you have already raised this, that when they were putting ingredients, me, I disagreed with them, and this was my trend.
And you're suggesting they don't do that, enough of that.
I mean,
But just waiting for when the food has been served, and you're saying this food has too much pili-pili.
Over to Joseph, and I think just you'll pardon us for the light on you. We are. It's a rare honor to have a member of parliament within us to break down these issues. Honorable Sheno, we have him saying that maybe Semuju, assuming there was a disagreement on whether
the committee
the
members,
minority report was submitted or not, but the mere fact of him coming to what he calls politique in parliament, could that be an indictment or a symptom of helplessness within the system that he then has to air out to the public or show this public face that there is a problem, or is it sheer politicking?
No, I think it's both systems and institutions, and I think I sort of got lost in there. But just to clarify, I'm not honourable because once I've stood for Parliament, I've not gone to Parliament. And once I'm almost de facto president of the political party, that does not qualify me on that. And before my good brother Jacob Olanya passed, it was my intention to support the process, including parliamentarians in some of the training issues. So that maybe some of these are languages that may be able to try and help clarify the public. Sometimes when I go some spaces, some of those are called, it's very difficult to correct people, but this, considering that this is a program designed specifically for this, maybe it's an opportunity to clarify that, particularly for our younger viewers with whom we hope we're enabling. But number two, my conversation has been very deliberate. That it's, I'm usually loud, that perhaps we create an enabling environment in which we get a lot more from Bernard rather than anything else. But that said, I think I am very skeptical that there is going to be a fundamental change in all these processes, because don't forget that budgets as presented will normally be coming from the governing political organization, this political party, which is NRM. It will basically be their visions. It will be their agenda. It will basically be their programs. What we are seeing and what we saw yesterday is Mr. Museveni's priority, and that's why I was very deliberate about it. He heads this political organization, which unfortunately is in charge of our country. And it's not surprising that for him, health is not the priority, education is not a priority, but perhaps he suits, some of which are not particularly very well tailored. I would possibly suggest, other tailors, but those are neither here nor there. No, the problems are institutional. And so the current Legislative Assembly, as composed, quite clearly has a majority NRM guys who are actually whipped by a whip that is going to tell them possibly vote this way, do this way. But it's not a justification to say that, well, members of the Legislative Assembly, who are, in which case perhaps Bernard cannot take a particular position and simply say, guys, what is going on here? I don't see major changes taking place. Where I see hope is if it is the case, as Bernard has suggested, that in this case particularly in terms of the abuse of the processes by the executive, and the legislative have seen that, look, there is a loophole here. We need to amend the constitution to deal with this monster called an executive, which is all powerful, an executive that calls parliament his thing, an executive that knows that the majority of the people in parliament, he can ring them or perhaps instruct them to come to State House, or perhaps instruct them to wear masks and say, wait 200 meters away, but we can't talk from a particular distance. Then I am not sure what else. It is the same with the executive. Is this with the legislative assembly? It is the same with the judiciary. And it's really interesting hearing from Bernard. I have a case which is more than 2.5 years. And it's a very big case. Although I was promised six months ago that there would be a ruling, by December, I have now been waiting for 5 months, merely for an outcome of court. Last December, December 9th. And actually, when we went to court, Bernard, I nearly went berserk. I'm giving context. I nearly went berserk when we went to court. Ended up in court, and we were told that the judge was on leave, and the judge was on leave without giving direction. Now, me coming from a space in which I knew systems that worked in Uganda, here Museveni was in the bush, but systems which were weak but generally worked. And then I went on to equip myself in the mother of parliamentary democracy, Westminster, and I engaged with ministers, parliamentary committees, parliamentary groups, and supported members of parliament, including ministers. I actually find it extremely irritating what I see. So the problem really are not individuals. The problem is institutional arrangement. And my hope is that in some of these conversations, we're able to gather many more Ugandans together to begin to use systems. What are we going to be able to do with parliamentarians, particularly young parliamentarians like Bernard Odoi, in terms of creating awarenesses and being able to encourage them to take positions and begin to say, no, it is either this or basically I'm not part of this. I think those are some of the things that we need to be able to do. But beyond that, I think the wider public also need to begin to take responsibility, meaning the wider public also need to begin to engage, so that we are able to say that, look, Mr. Museveni abuses a supplementary budget. Mr. Museveni abuses the processes, and part of some of what Semoju did yesterday, actually, I get your point about his involvement with the committee, but actually his contribution to the floor of the House was very useful, because actually generals has brought slightly much more awareness by the population. The more of this actually happen, the more Mr. Museveni needs to know that he cannot come to Mulanda today, and possibly get the same kind of votes he got the other day, unless by co-option, because there are people who actually don't know that when Mr. Museveni turns up in Tororo and gives a crooked-looking brown envelope, that is their money. Their people don't know that is their money. So maybe the more we do this, help, thanks to your networks, meaning the media, that the more we do these things, maybe the more we're going to make it harder for Mr. Museveni to take us as impunity. But the quick thing is this, that for me, I cannot just wait for a process that makes sure that Mr. Museveni retires and we're able to have a genuine fresh start in this country.
Yeah, because I was wondering when you, it's ironical, because you keep calling out to the public to stand up and all this, but then we don't see it a lot of the times. There's sort of a demoralization within.
Yes, too long. It's been too long.
If when you say Museveni is abusing his office, do you feel like he has mastered this art?
Oh, well, he's monopolized it. He's abusing an office which is occupied by force, and he's perfected the art of it. And he knows that people can't shake. And the only way to do it is to create an awareness amongst the critical mass of our people, including people in the Legislative Assembly. Yeah. And actually, people like Bernard want to know that whatever is happening at the moment has got net impact and net impact on them. For them, good enough. Bernard refers to Hansard, that in 50 years' time, what your contributions, what made will be found and is on Hansard, and Hansard more than any other book minus the Bible and the Quran, it will be there. And that when whatever you do now today, if we play Loboa, you're absolutely right the way you put Mulago. If you play Loboa, we play Atiak, your children, fantastic job children, in the next 20 years will be looking for jobs. Mr. Museveni will have retired, and whether he likes it or not, Mr. Museveni will have retired, and maybe it will be his son, even his son, I'm not sure whether he will be there in 20 years' time. I hope he's not there as president to replace his father, because we are not a monarchy, and fantastic young citizens like Harris, like Bernard, like you. I would like to be your advisor at the rear when you guys are president. Surely not Mr. Museveni's son, I think. So if we know anyway that your children, need to be in 18 years' time to be in a Uganda in which whatever these guys are doing today and they did yesterday, has a direct impact on building for them, but also strategically planning long-term for them, then that's the future of Uganda that I want. A Uganda in which we have engineers who cannot predict or project what's happening on River Katonga, and they're busy burning trees, and Mbarara gets cut off. Mbarara has got cut off from the rest of the world. That is a republic that I don't want. A republic in which there is no guarantee that I will walk between now and between here and Mukono and plan myself over 45 minutes without the potholes for which Mr. Mohozi, now an army general, is promising to sort out the potholes in Kampala. I don't know whether he's going to use cow dung, because I don't know what people are using specially that is going to be able to sort out this mess. That is what Ugandans need to wait. And these are not partisan issues. These are not partisan issues. These are national security issues. These are national emergency issues. These are national imperatives going forward.
Yeah. Honorable Harris, I know you for a matter of fact that you're honorable. Without fear of contradiction. Right honorable. Yeah.
So when I will Kawempe usually what I say is always right, and that's what the law has decreed.
Mr. Osheno, kill all the birds.
This Muslim guy is called your president.
The president, His Excellency.
Mr. Osheno, and I'm killing all the titles with one stone, speaks passionately about what could be and what is supposed to be. But at the same tone, I can't help but notice he speaks a lot about the future. Do you see any change? I know you see a lot of unfairness. You see a lot of... Where do you see the change coming from?
Well, I want to be honest that our country gets the leaders it deserves. Freedom doesn't come free. Freedom is fought for. And when you look at the trajectory of this country from 2001 up to date, you clearly see that we have been deteriorating in terms of democracy and narrowing of civic spaces, and becoming more and more of a dictatorship, So if, as citizens, don't come together in a strong manner and say, this is not the direction we would like our country to take, then even in 10, 20 years, we are going to be stuck in a dictatorship. And because a dictatorship uses unsustainable means to keep itself in power, we are going to have more deterioration of services. We are going to have more stunted and even deteriorating economic growth. We are going to have more and more of the same problems. Now, I am not as optimistic as my brother when he says that they are seeking an amendment to curtail the abuse of the provision of supplementary budget in the Act, Public Finance Management Act. Why? Because the unity he speaks of when they were passing the anti-homosexuality bill was because the Supreme Leader didn't have an interest in that act. He did not. If you ask him, no one knows where actually his loyalty is. When he appears, you know, this is an issue where Ugandans are strongly opinionated. Even the members of parliament, for once they thought they were on the side of the members of the public. So they were united. Why? Because it didn't check the powers of the dictatorship. What we are talking about are essential checks and balances on the executive. The excesses in terms of expenditure, the excesses in terms of budgetary allocations, as we have seen yesterday, the parliament passed, that they cannot be united. Why? Because it checks the powers of the Supreme Leader. The Supreme Leader to whose altar they come and bow. They all come and bow to his altar. How can they check him? The ballooning, the burgeoning budget of the state has been so in since the last 10, 20 years. We've been talking about the out of proportion budget of the state, out of proportion budget of the state. Go analyze the documents of Parliament, the budget specifically, and the commentaries in the public domain immediately after the passing of the budget. The State House luxurious expenditure always stands out, yet Parliament has failed to check it. Why? Because this is an institution of the people, supposedly an institution of the people, which was taken away from the people. When Mr. Museveni gives money to members of Parliament, he is investing for his own sake in the future after the elections. And we clearly see that now. Yes, he puts money in these all NRM cadres, everyone 200, 400, 500 million, go and win using state resources. Why? Because he wants people who are going to come to the altar and say, yes, yes, yes. You want 500 million for this? Yes. You want 714 billion for your house? Yes. That is the state in which we are. Now, in conclusion, I come to what my elder brother has said.
Yeah.
That we have a total collapse of institutions within this country. And usually the last resort is Parliament. And when you look at, especially the history of Britain, it is Parliament that has salvaged their freedom and democracy as we understand it.
Yeah.
And at the time they were contesting against a very strong monarch. They had all the resources, they had all the power, they had everything. But for the future of that country that we all want to go to now, the Parliament stood up and I said, no man, no single man under this country can be above the law. No single man can have this much power. And they sacrificed. Some were killed, others were arrested arbitrarily, others were tortured, but eventually the will of the people won. So the hard truth in our case is that we must galvanize the country. We must galvanize the country, starting, and I don't have a lot of hope in Parliament. I mean, yesterday I was talking to colleagues and I asked them a question. If we removed salary for elected leaders, from councillor to MPs, from councillor to mayors, speakers of divisions, speakers of districts, to members of Parliament, how many among the current crop of leaders would turn up as members of Parliament? Tell me. So I don't have hope there because we don't have a leadership there. We have profiteers. So we have a leadership crisis in this country. So in order to achieve what my senior brother is calling for, we need people to come together. It is up to the Ugandans. And that moment will happen only when the suffering in this country becomes unsufferable.
Yeah.
Because there is no single leader anywhere in the history of this world who has ever saved their people. Anywhere. Go to USA, go to any democracy that we all aspire to today. It has always been the people. So the media, you have a big role educating the masses. It's only when the masses become tired, it's only when Ugandans say enough is enough of this dictatorship that we shall be able to restore our institutions, that we shall be able to get proper leaders in the true sense of the word elected.
Yeah.
Other than that, we are still in a vicious cycle of
and Honorable Harris, just before I come to Mr. Ocean and finally the man in the arena, when you speak and we have these discussions, I'm normally reminded of someone who said democracy is but the best among the worst.
Yes.
But we do have different stakeholders, as you know, usually parliamentarians, which is the main, we hope, the main audience of this of this roundtable. But we also have our viewers and other stakeholders. We would like to have a parting message, message of hope, or message of no hope, but a parting message coming from you.
All right. So you want me to give my concluding remarks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I want to start by thanking you, Ola, for having me.
Yeah.
And thanking our viewers for always sticking with us on this program, Focus on Parliament. Parliament is so essential because it is the assembly of the people. It's the representation of the people. And things change or fail to change beginning and ending with Parliament.
Yeah.
So I take it seriously. I take it as a very important contribution in our struggle for freedom of this country. So I thank our viewers always for follow us on Twitter, always tune in and listen to our ideas. My conclusion is very simple, and it's a reiteration of the message of my brother, that we need to come together as a country, start feeling each other's pain, start making our fiction. You know, when we talk about a country, legally it's a fiction because we are 45 million people, and so we don't know each other. 90% of those people you'll never know, you'll never meet, but yet we bring together taxes to build roads, to build services, to build a society, to build a community. So when you have one person take away so much from the community, it undermines the national spirit, it undermines economic development, it undermines the motivation of the laborers, it undermines taxpayers, it undermines everything. And so we could have 10 or 20 more years of lost development, of lost opportunity, if we don't stop this regime now. And that's why I would like to call upon the country, irrespective of our political affiliations, irrespective of our ethnic divide and all that, to harness our commonality and say, as a nation, with all the natural resources we have, the beauty we have, this is one of the most beautiful countries. I'm telling you, naturally, it's one of the most beautiful countries. So we need to come together as a population and build a national consciousness that is going to lead us to the next level. So thank you very much for God and my country.
Thank you very much. And as they say, good script always has a plot twist. And it was interesting to hear from someone who is always calling for nation building, to call the country a fiction. But,
and also to give respect to Parliament. And also to give credit to Parliament.
Over to Mr. Oshino. It has been a good discussion. You, like me, has been enabling. I saw a lot of argument on your words from both sides. Would love to hear your parting remarks as well on this matter.
No, I think thank you very much. I would have liked to hear from Harris about this question of leadership. Harris represents a political organization that now has got the privilege to be the alternative largest in the assembly. And part of my concern is that you're absolutely right. There is insufficient leadership. There's no leadership nationally because Mr. Museveni is not providing it. Mr. Museveni has perfected the art of his interests, and that's a fact. In the alternative, even within NRM, I'm not sure that there is a leadership enough of men and women conscious as citizens at a much more solid level. Ben, I'm not looking at you. At a much more solid level to consciously say, where are we going well, either as a political organization, NRM, or taking the country, or as an alternative view, insufficient. In this case, the other alternative political organizations, meaning including, in this case, you as my young brother, Robert, I would like to see Robert being slightly much more robust. And I think in a way, as Bernard was hinting earlier, perhaps to come with slightly much more very deliberate positions on major issues of debate on in the country and run it through the assembly. I know your organization has got issues with the leadership in the assembly, which all other political parties have, including UPC. No.
We shall debate it another
I am
day.
contextualizing it, and I'm not making any partisan observation. At my stage in some of these things, it's not necessary. I can make the points without necessarily going in a particular direction. So, as a matter of, in a responsible way, across the political divide, we lack leadership. In my own political organization, I'm a leader without an office. And in the event that perhaps I was formerly president of Uganda People's Congress, seated at Uganda House, some of the issues that Bernard raised, you would not necessarily have needed to raise that. I would have genuinely made it actually felt. To the extent that I also know that some of the issues that now NRM runs with, many of them are things that are possibly pinch from my end anyway. What is primarily lacking away from leadership is that leadership that comes with ideological leanings, meaning party positions, manifesto positions of political parties and organizations. And then the problem is NRM is struggling with ideological coherency that would otherwise have given them lead direction. What are we, the party of farmers? Are we the party of workers? Are we the party of public service? Are we the party that believes in infrastructure? Are we the party that believes in investment in the youth? Are we the party of industry? Are we the party of low taxation? Are we the party of checking interest rates to single-digit figures? Kind of stuff. Are we the party of the environment? These are the big thinking thing which generally is lacking and which in part underpins the circumstances in which the big things that make the headlines are neither here nor there. Yeah. In the event that UPC was leading the process, you would know that our priorities are this. Our priorities are health.
You had it end with UPC.
No. Because it's natural. We are the past, we are the foundation, and we are the imperative realities, and we are the future. You know, so the big things would be you'd come and simply say, and you guys, and it's instinctive, very much important for the viewers. It's instinctive. So you wake up in the morning and say, what is happening in the Republic of Uganda today? Consciously, I would wake up and simply say, where are the young guys? Consciously, what is happening here? Oh, what is the possibilities of the young, beautiful Cameroon lady? Where will she be in 10 years' time? You know, what is the possibility that the shambles that I see at Bugiri Hospital every time I'm going home, what is happening there? We built it a long time ago. Where is the next hospital in Uganda? So, prioritizing, but based on your values, based on your convictions. These are some of the broader leadership, lacking leadership kind of things that I hope going forward, as we begin as we build more of these debates, will be enhanced. That the current crop of legislators, possibly watching and listening, begin to give some of these deep thoughts. I genuinely believe it's another hope that as Mr. Museveni gets too tired to get up, even if you give him a formal suit, you know, people will begin to ask what next in terms of where we're going as a people. And the more this review that the conversation talk about transition, the more I hope that people will not be thinking about where am I and where are we as a country, but what is our strategic thinking. And I hope that means there will be a possibility for political realignment where with sensible leadership, apparent leadership, people are able to begin to regroup in terms of with our priorities. And when that happens, I hope that will be the regrouping that will save the institutional arrangements, and so therefore a parliament as a national assembly, the other arms of government, meaning the judiciary, and perhaps who then takes over the executive. But that means therefore that a future budget, possibly in the next several years, that happens. When budget day comes, is a big national day when people want to be next to the radios and televisions. What are the priorities? Because genuinely their lives are being impacted. And if you say tax rise is this, projected inflation rate is this, people know it's real because thinkers have gone through it and have done some work on it. And by and large also say that, well, pay rounds, which has led to the killing of the minister, pay rounds, you know, this time for public services, you know, the pay rise is going to be A, B, C, D. And people know that, well, from my earnings this time, I am able to afford school fees. From my earnings this year, I'm able to make sure that I do some savings so that I'm able to buy a house or perhaps to rent in a slightly much more a sensible place. That means there's a certainty in our country. But generally, whatever happens, that I want to conclude with, the national priority cannot, in terms of spending, cannot be security. The national priority cannot be president's office or defense. The national security, unless we are a big nation that is threatened by the Sudan, national priorities in all sensible nation states should be about our health, very urgently, our education, our infrastructure, which NRA has put into shambles. They need to be checked onto that. And unless we're able to do that, and then primarily agriculture. When every time you and I are coming from Toro, we see Busitema, which was a National Agricultural College, which UPC leaders thought about this in 60 years and they built it. Until today, is neither here nor there. Some of these things are commonsensical things. So in the absence of them, people who replace you as the next youth MP will find all these kind of dilemmas playing. But no, the future of this country is too important, you know, to be left to a conversation over television one day and then the following day we forget about it. But no, this country is possible. All we need to do is to believe in better. And the future of this country is in the hands of the young people. I'm slightly much more optimistic.
Mr. Joseph Osiono, thank you very much. And over to you, the man in the arena. I think it was Woodrow Wilson that encouraged people to pursue being in the arena rather than spectating. But we are really honored to have you straight from Parliament, and I think you have the unique opportunity to give an outro for this conversation but also to clarify on issues you thought were not clarified, and finally, to say something to the citizenry. Unlike the other speakers speaking to Parliament, you speak to the public.
Thank you. Let me start with the words of Martin Luther King, that our country begins to rot when the leaders are silent. I want to reiterate again that as a new member of Parliament, as a youth member of Parliament representing the majority of citizens of this country, as 11th Parliament, if you read Article 164 and Chapter 9 of the Constitution, Parliament has powers to audit and ask for accountability. But I alluded to the fact that whereas we have that mandate, but there's that loophole that government hides on. The test of our service as a country, as leaders, the test of each one of us as citizens, more informed, you, him, me, all of us, especially as who are informed. The test of our leadership is measured in terms of lives and livelihood of our people. It is time for us to rise up, not because you're a member of Parliament, not because you're a TV presenter, not because you're a priest, but as an accountable citizen of this country.
Yeah.
That whatever we say, whatever decisions we make, directly impacts on the lives of our people, on the livelihood of our people, in terms of education, in terms of health care, in terms of economic empowerment. My voice is simple. We should rise up collectively. Let each one of us do their part. Let's not wait for one time and speak. And then that goes for the camera. Then we wait 12 months later and speak about the same. Let the conversation be continuous. It is my duty, it is your duty to inform the other person who's not privy to this information. That are you aware that government actually sent 10 millions to this parish? Did you get it? You don't have to be a priest to do that. You don't have to be an MP to do that. You don't have to be a councillor. You must be a sober citizen of this country who wishes this country progress. If leaders are not accountable, you who gives them mandate must hold their feet and take the fireplace.
Yeah.
Must address the other citizens who don't have access to this information. That, by the way, in even our local dialect, this alone is a good start. But when I go back to Tororo, if I go back to Soroti, my constituency, if I go back to Jinja Sebei, if I'm in Gulo, if I'm in Barara, I must address the young people and tell them, this is the plan that government has for you. How far has it reached? We must wholesomely hold government accountable, hold our leaders accountable, and give hope. We are living in a multi-party dispensation where leaders are aligned to the party interest. That does not stop you from standing and say, whereas this is the party interest, but I believe this direction is better to offer that alternative. You don't have to belong to an opposition for you to do that. And does it also mean that if you are part of the opposition leadership, so everything must be fought? There should be time. One of the greatest musicians said, there comes a time when leaders must converge together and pursue a common goal, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what you stand for, in terms of party or religion or color. We must stand for the citizens of this country. As a serving member of Parliament, I believe there is hope. The fact that we have this space to share is a good beginning. The fact that you can go and have a meeting and address the youth, the women, the PWDs, the citizens of this country, for me, is a good way to go. We must rise up, stand firm, and do something for our generation. We will not stand and make references only to the past regime. UPC did this. These ones who are also now interested say, if we get, we will do this. NRM say, we have done this. No. We can collectively build a better country for ourselves, for our children, and for our children's children. This is our country. We shall go nowhere. This is where we live, and God put us here for a cause. Let's stand firm. Let our voice be backed by actions, deliberate interest, and serve this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bernard Odoi. Hosting this show for a few times now, I start to notice some trends. One of them being that normally the persons in government or within state operations accuse the others of being romantic, and the others accuse the other of not being practical. So it's, I mean, yeah, the government people accuse the others of being a bit romantic, the opposition of being romantic, and the opposition accuse government of not being, doing enough. But then to hear a powerful outro like that, I think speaks to the spirit that we want to put up in this space. Honorable Harris Akampurira, Right Honorable Speaker of Kawempe Republic, Honorable Bernard Odoi, the MP of Eastern Uganda Youth, and Mr. Joseph Osheno, a UPC ideologue and media personality. It was a great pleasure having you. To our dear viewers, I hope it was an enriching session. Like Honorable Bernard said, this is our country. Let's continue to build it together. Thank you. Until next time on Focus on Parliament, with me, Okotola.